Shabbat shalom. We'll try that again. Shabbat shalom. Before we read Torah this morning, we read a section of Kohelet, of Ecclessiastes. And as I said earlier, that the rabbis intentionally want to link the different Megillot that we find in Ketuvim, in the Book of Writings, to different holidays. The question is, what is the connection between Sukkot and Ecclesiastes? We could talk about how Sukkot is the fall harvest festival. As we sit outside in the sukkah, we see the leaves changing and slowly falling off of the branches, the trees being naked for the winter before they begin to bloom and bear fruit again in the cycle of life. And yet, the book of Ecclesiastes isn't filled with much optimism. Kohelet begins with the idea of Hevel Hevelim, right? That all is futile. That's this idea of what is the point of anything if no matter what blessings we have in life, we're all going to end the same. Not much optimism, not much joy in what Kohelet is saying. And I get it, right? It's talking about the routine of life. We all may have been there. Those early days of the pandemic when we were like, do we really have to change out of these sweats that we've been wearing for 3 days in a row? You know, all right, we can have ice cream for 3 meals a day because we're just trying to get through the day. That is what Kohelet is telling us, and it's odd to hear that days after Yom Kippur. Days after the Talmud says the most joyous of all days is Yom Kippur. Days after we should be celebrating being written and sealed in the book of life for a year to come. We now have this idea of Hevel Hevelim. But I would suggest that it's not the beginning. It's not the idea that all is futile, but it is actually what our Megillah reader, our Torah, read for us in chapter 3, the most famous part of Ecclesiastes, that there is a season for everything. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to be hurt and a time to heal, a time to tear down, a time to build up, a time to cry, a time to laugh, a time to wail, a time to dance, a time to throw stones and gather stones, a time to embrace, a time to shun, a time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to discard, and so on and so forth. What Ecclesiastes is actually telling us is what Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel teaches is the necessary polarities of life. That we need these polar extremes because without one, we take the others for granted. So why on this holiday where Torah commands us V'samachta b'chagecha, that we should be joyous in our holiday, do we read a text where we're told all in life is futile because we need to experience at times the lowest of lows to appreciate the highest of highs. We accept that all throughout life, at different moments and in different ways for all of us, and sometimes when we're experiencing the depth of it, understandably, we say this is not fair. And understandably, we say, why me? We're one polar extreme. And we feel the sense of Hevel Hevelim, that all is futile. But by experiencing those polar extremes, when we get these moments of joy, when we have this holiday where we're commanded V'samachta b'chagecha, that we should be joyous in our holiday, we don't take that for granted. And that is really our task. Our bat mitzvah taught us how fragile the sukkah itself is, that when we sit in it, a simple windstorm may topple it over, may cause the schach to fall into our food, and it's a reminder of the fragility of life. And when we have that fragility, when we're reminded of that fragility, all the more so when we have moments of joy and celebration, we don't take those moments for granted. And so, that is our hope and our prayer on this holiday and when we're commanded to be joyful. That at times we deal with the realities of life and it's hard to find that joy. But because we deal with those realities, when we have opportunities to celebrate joy, we don't take those moments for granted either. Shabbat Shalom.